Okay, so now we're going to talk about grading activities. I think you're starting to get this, or you'll get this in your activity analysis class with Kim. We're going to apply it to the shoulder, elbow, and scapula stuff that we're starting to learn. See how it connects with the anatomy and this, all the measurement stuff that you're starting to learn. Okay. When you're grading an activity, when you're thinking about using an activity with the client, the first thing you want to really aim for definitely is it meaningful? Are you getting that flow kind of stuff? Is it the just right challenge? Just right challenge. What does that mean? It's a task that is not too hard and not too easy. So you're challenging the client as much as possible, but you're not overwhelming them. In the same sense, you're not making it too easy. You want them to work as hard as they can, get that just right challenge. Doing a lot with dancing around improving somebody's balance for fall prevention, grading the dance from sitting to standing, certain dance moves. So somebody loves to dance, you want them to dance to improve their balance. The waltz, some other dances. So we want to make it hard for them, but not too hard for them. So they're not going to fall, they're not going to get frustrated, but they're really working hard and challenging themselves, challenging those components of balance in this case. Talk more about that as you move through the program. So adaptable, gradable, adjusting the degree of difficulty, making incremental challenges. So somebody, you hit that just right challenge and they're working hard, but not too hard, or they're not overwhelmed. And then they start to master that particular level with the activity. You got to make it harder. Kind of keep going up, upping the stakes, so to speak. Challenge that is not too hard or too easy. Meaning flow is lost if the challenge is too great. Same thing if it's too easy. You need to continuously adjust the activity to create the just right challenge. Here's just some simple kind of ideas around grading activities. Need to know this again. I think there's questions on the exam around this. How would you grade range of motion? Quite simply, you can move the object. Say, I think we talked about grooming a dog, move it out further away, closer, that sort of thing, or the client. So they have to reach more, basically. How do you grade strength? Different ways of grading strength. We know about gravity. Moving your arm against gravity is harder than with or minimized gravity plane. That's kind of the first thing that might come to mind. Manipulate gravity for the strength. If somebody's doing an arm exercise, you can use pulleys and skateboards to kind of give them like an active assist. You can give them weights and resistance, obviously. How do you grade endurance? Endurance is a big thing you're working on a lot as a therapist. Increase how much of the load they're lifting, time and distance, simple things can make a big difference. Repetitions, just doing things more. And then standing versus sitting. That seems like a simple thing, but it can be very powerful. Start sitting, doing the activity, then work towards standing and doing the activity. How do you grade coordination? You're doing this a lot when you're working with kiddos in the schools and different contexts. Going from gross to fine motor progression, so obviously making the objects smaller, more challenging to manipulate. Dexterity and speed. How quickly can they do it? Timing them to do it. A lot of the assessments around coordination are timed assessments. Here's an example. Working in the garden. A lot of folks love to work in the garden. Can be very meaningful to them. And you can work on all kinds of different things in the garden, mentally and physically. How would you grade range of motion around working in the garden? Adjust the amount of reaching and hoeing, weeding, planting, closer, further out, sitting, standing, those sorts of things. How do you grade strength? Increase the intensity of the heavy digging and the hoeing. Grade the amount of water, as simple as how much water they're carrying in their water can. You can put weights on their wrists, on the tools. How do you grade endurance? Times, sitting and standing, how much hoeing and weeding they do. That can be very strenuous. How do you grade coordination, motor control? Grade the thickness of the grips. Like, for example, this little hoe or whatever it is, digging thing. How thick is this? The thinner it is, the more control it may require. Thicker can be easier. You can put resistive stuff on the grip to make it easier to hang on to. circumference of the grading tools. Manipulation of seeds. Seeds are very fine motorists. Takes a lot of pincer grips to pick them up. Removing dead leaves, weeds, all these different things you can just grade gardening. It's a great activity to do for that. So let's think of examples. Think of this, do this in your head. I'll do it for you, something I like to do, but really try to do it on yourself, an activity that you like to do. Think about how you would grade it. If you were a patient in a hospital, occupational therapist came to you and she or he asked you, what do you love to do? And you said, oh, I love to do this. And you would problem solve together how to grade the activity. Okay, so let's say I'm grading, what can I grade? I would say cooking. Sometimes I like to cook if I have the time. So how would I grade cooking for my scapula, shoulder, and elbow? Just really, really basically, it gets a lot more sophisticated as you would think. But kind of reaching up into the cupboard to get stuff, versus just working at a tabletop. You might start an activity, you're just sitting at the table or sitting in a wheelchair, cooking at the table, and then you move to the counter, a little bit higher up, standing, and then you can move to reaching into that cupboard to get those dishes and pots and pans. Strength, pots and pans. How heavy are they? Two-handed big pots and pans. Can you maneuver them out of the cupboard into the stove? Grabbing a jug of milk out of the refrigerator. Different activities can make you increase the strength. Endurance, usually around time. What kind of meal is it? We call it a simple meal. Maybe just using the microwave or something, or making a bowl of soup or cereal, to a complex meal. You're using the stove and you're cooking a chicken and some vegetables and potatoes. That's how you can grade the endurance. Determine 2 alternate activities that you find meaningful that would work on the same issues as your favorite activity and grade each of them over 2 levels for range of motion, strength, endurance. I'll do one, and maybe you can do one on your own. Tennis. I like to play tennis. I think that would grade easily around range of motion. I think you could grade tennis. You could just volley, going back and forth with tennis, and then the serving. A lot more range of motion, a lot more strength. So maybe we're just going to volley back and forth. You could even start with a gaming system. The Wii's used to be popular, other gaming systems. You're kind of doing the simulated tennis. You could even do it sitting. And then you go to the tennis court and you're just volleying back and forth. And then this would be a progression of somebody had a shoulder injury and they're a tennis player and they're trying to get them back, to playing tennis again. And then you could do overhead tennis. I was just thinking of a patient I had. He loved baseball, just playing catch with his son and stuff. Injured his shoulder, and then as his shoulder got stronger, we started playing catch in the clinic, actually. And we just did underhand tosses back and forth at a short distance. And then we worked our way to further apart, and then eventually started doing overhand tosses and picked up the velocity a little bit. So you could grade it over range of motion, strength, and endurance. Okay, so let's